God's a love that's divine, yours and it's mine like the sun.
Well, a priest and a pastor from local ministries were standing on the side of the road. And they had a sign that said, "The end is near. Turn yourself around before it's too late." And along came a man in a speeding car. And he rolled down his window and he yelled out, "Leave us alone, you religious nuts!" And then he stepped on the gas and he speeded around the turn. And in just a few seconds, you heard the screeching of brakes and then a splash. And the priest looked at the minister and said, "Maybe we should just hold a sign that said, 'Bridge is out ahead.'" Kind of makes you think that maybe the driver of that car had a story that he was living. And because of that story, he couldn't be totally in the moment. Ever been like that? We are the authors of our story. Isn't that great? How about that? This man had a life, a time that was very difficult. He spent 3 years in a concentration camp. And he was able to look beyond the horribleness of that experience, beyond the suffering that his friends and other Jewish people experienced in that horrible place. And in spite of it all, he was able to endure this nightmare. And many died. He was able to move beyond the horrificness and behold a deeper truth. He wrote these words, "Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." If anyone could choose to create something negative, it could have been Viktor Frankl. But instead, he chose a different response, to focus on the compassion and love of those that were standing with him. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl shares a revelation that he had while standing outside in the mud near a hut where there were shelves in the hut where other prisoners slept. And he beheld this flower, or not this one exactly, but a flower like this one. And in the midst of this horrific circumstance, amongst the mud and all the footsteps, he said, if this flower can survive in the midst of all this horribleness, in this horrible weather, in these conditions, and all these footsteps that walk back and forth and on it, I too can survive. Frankl discovered that the freedom that he was looking for, that we all can find, is within. He said that in order to find that freedom, we merely need to look within. If we connect, and when we connect with our spiritual selves, we can know that truth. Beyond the illusions, beyond what we see, beyond our expectations, our circumstances. Even though our circumstances are certainly different today than Viktor Frankl's were, we can still look beyond them and remember the truth. When we can connect with the essence and the power of life and love and wisdom and truth, that is the divine nature, the beloved, the spark of divine love that's in each of us. He was 3 pounds, 2 ounces when he was born. He was cross-eyed. He had childhood asthma. He was in an incubator for 6 weeks. He was a skinny and weak child. His mom didn't allow him to play much with other children in the neighborhood because he was so sickly. He was uncoordinated and not very good at catching a ball or throwing a ball. Often the last one picked by other students playing baseball, softball, or basketball. He created a story about himself that he believed that he was unhealthy, unworthy, and unhappy. And that boy was me. Stephen Covey wrote, "I am not a product of my circumstances. I am a product of my decisions." The truth is, we can't change the past, but we can change how it affects our lives. We can change the stories that we've made up before about ourselves, about our experiences, because we all do this. Life happens, and then we give it meaning. It doesn't have meaning and then it happens. We give it the meaning that it has. And the truth is that we can change how the past affects us. When we change what we tell ourselves about the past, we can redirect our future. Because our future happens based upon what we think happened to us in the past. Have you ever heard anybody say, well, I can't do such and such. I am just not smart enough. I didn't graduate from high school. How many people, famous people, have not graduated from high school and then have gone on to be very successful? The stories we tell ourselves and others create our experiences. Oftentimes, we'll tell ourselves these stories that we make up, and then we'll tell other people the same thing. Well, I'm just not good enough, or I'm just not coordinated enough, or I just don't have it within me. I'm not smart enough. Anybody ever told anyone a similar story? Yeah? And the truth of it is, when we change our stories, we change our life. When we examine our stories, we can get insight into our current circumstances. And it's funny, after I wrote this, I thought the opposite is also true. When we examine our circumstances, we can also look back at what our stories are or were. Because our past stories define who we are right now. So we need to focus on telling stories that are true and possible and absolute. If we tell ourselves that we are strong, we will be strong. If we tell ourselves that we will be resilient, we will be resilient. If we tell ourselves that we are not powerful, then we will exhibit not being powerful. But when we tell ourselves that we are loving, we will attract love into our lives. Yes? And the other opposite of this is true also. If we don't believe that we have the possibility to love, I did. I felt that I didn't have the ability to love because I saw the fact that I lost my mom when I was 8 and my dad when I was 12. I thought for a long time that nobody loved me and that I was unlovable. But when I shifted that story, then I began to attract people into my life like you who love me and tell me they love me. We love you. Thank you. And it's funny, I couldn't hear that before because I didn't believe it myself. Even when somebody said they love me, part of me went, oh, not really, right? They don't really love me. because that was a story I had lived with and believed. At some point I believed that my parents consciously left me. And now I realize stuff just happens. Stuff happens, and then I give it meaning. We give it meaning. But there was no part of that showed a lack of love. And I thought for some time that it was my parents that left me because they didn't love me. I thought that the presence of God didn't love me and they were taken away from me. We create our stories, and then they come true because we believe them. I love this scripture a lot. It says, it's from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 12. It says, "For now we see in a mirror, darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know fully, even as also I was fully known." So what does that mean? To me it means, if you take just the first part, and we're sort of looking at this metaphysically, I'm looking for the deeper meaning that I believe that the author had when this scripture was written. For now I see in a mirror darkly. Sometimes things happen to me, to us, and we interpret it from the worst possible point of view, and we see it darkly. Our circumstances reflect to us, and our first response, my first response often, is to see it out of fear. Yeah? To say, oh boy, this is horrible. Look at how terrible that this situation happened to me. And we think that we see that situation out of fear. And then the author writes, but then, face to face. Face to face means that we come to that place where we can really see what's going on. And we can realize the truth that's in ourselves. When I realized that my parents really didn't choose to leave me, I could see the situation face to face. And I could know that this is just something that happened. And in spite of that, I know that my parents loved me and didn't leave me. I could see it face to face. So, but then, now I know in part. Kind of going back to the first part again. The first awareness that we have that something is going on, we only see a part of it. We only see the fearful part of it. But then I shall know fully, when we can totally reflect on the outcome and see it from the higher point of view, we can realize, okay, everything is okay. I can see the full picture. I can see from a perspective of love instead of a perspective of fear. And this part was the biggest mystery for me. But when I really got to focus on it and be with it, it says, but then shall I know fully, even as I was fully known. To me, that means that fully known means to know, that's when I totally get that I am an aspect of God. I am the presence of God. My full truth is to be a being of love. And this experience with my parents or in my childhood at first reflected my fear. But what I get to do when I realize the truth is to grow through that fear and realize the truth for myself, that I am a perfect aspect of God. And that even though these circumstances seemed unfortunate to me at the time, they helped me to see the truth. When we change our stories, we change our life. In all of those stories, when I realized the truth of all those things, and I covered a whole bunch of stuff in that, it shifted my life. It shifted my perspective on what the presence of God was, not to see it as a patriarchal essence separate from myself, but to see it as part of me, to realize that my parents loved me. Of course they did. They didn't leave me. It just was something that happened. Life happens, and then we give it meaning. So my story now is different. Now I know that I'm loved. Now I know that the presence of God is everywhere. Now I know that the presence of love is everywhere. Now that I know I can forgive myself for my old story and know that it was just a story, and I did the best that I could in the moment to translate that story in a way that I could understand it. And my understanding has changed, has shifted. Change your story, change your life. And we can rewrite our stories. Isn't that great? Yeah. So I'm going to show you some ways today that you can rewrite your story. And the process that I'm going to take you through is in the Walk Your Talk, which is in the back. And I've got some places here for you to fill out and to finish the sentence that'll help with the process. So I invite you to pick that up after the service today. So how can we rewrite our story? The first thing we have to do is be willing. Rewriting our story means opening up to the bigger picture. It means being willing to change. And we all know that change is fun, yeah? Woo, yeah! I'm loving that change thing, yes? Because when we face that change, it pushes us up against our growing edge, right? And since we're standing on the edge of possibility when we make changes. And these changes are huge, and these changes will change your life if you decide that you want to change. And it's one of the many decisions that we get to have as we sit and stand on this huge mud ball rolling through the universe at 20,000 miles an hour or whatever it is. But we get to make changes. So if you want to change your story, you have to be willing, first of all, to make some changes. Yippee! Yahoo! All right, so let's try how that feels. I've got an affirmation I want you to try on and just kind of feel how it feels for you. I am willing to change my story and change my life. I don't have it up here. You're going to have to hold it here. Okay, I'll say it again and then invite you just to say it, and I want you to feel how it feels as you say it. I'll say it first. I am willing to change my story and change my life. Let's say it together. I am willing to change my story and change my life. So just feel that for a moment. I know for me, I get kind of a mixed message. Part of me is like, woo, yeah, and then the other part goes, oh no. Oh, I'm not wanting to change anything. I'm comfortable where I am, yeah? And so you get to examine that as we go through this process, and I'll invite you, we won't be able to do all that today, but I invite you to experiment with the process this week. Okay, so the second thing we get to do, and this is always the easiest one, is to forgive yourself. I think it gets easier. Be willing to change and then forgive yourself. To forgive yourself for having the old story. Because we all do the best that we can with whatever is happening in our lives. And sometimes we react out of those old stories. Anybody? Never. All right, you get to move over here and sit over, and these are the... What do they call it in the band? The first chair. You get to move to the first chair. So we get to forgive ourselves for the old stories and for acting however we acted, believing that the old story was true. Because sometimes when we're believing that old story, I guess you're supposed to use I statements. So I'll say sometimes when I am living out of an old story, I express unconscious behavior. Yeah, it means I'm not acting from my highest self. You know, I'm getting angry, or I'm being rude, or I'm squirting people with my squirt gun at Costco. All kinds of funny stuff happens. And so you get to forgive yourself for the unenlightened story, as well as the actions that may have come for that. And so a lot of times, just to forgive yourself just means to say, I forgive myself. I forgive myself for my past limited stories and my actions. So let's try that on and see how that feels. So I'll say it again and then invite you to speak it with me. I forgive myself for my past limited stories and my behavior. Let's say that together. I forgive myself for my past limited stories and my behavior. Sometimes forgiveness comes in the blink of an eye. Sometimes we have to say it and experience it a few times before we can totally embrace it in mind, body, and spirit. And the third key to rewriting your story is to take time to reflect. To take time in meditation and prayer, or in however that works for you, to spend time in the silence and just listen. And to ask, what was my old story? What was the old belief that I had? What is the truth that I can know about myself? And then to say, okay, so this is the truth, so how do I want to reinterpret that story? And you could write it down by saying, this old story, or I have a new story. I'm making this up as I go. Drop the cue sheet. My new story is that I am whole and healthy. My new story is that I am brilliant. My new story is that I'm creative. My new story is that I'm loving. And I know for myself to take the story of my parents leaving me and to say, you know what? My new story is my parents love me. And I am love. And I am loving. And that's the new way that I see this story. So I'm connecting with the beloved, connecting with the presence of God, with spirit, with divine mind. I'm just saying, what is it that I can know? How is it that I can be? Poet Ella Wheeler wrote, "There is no chance, no destiny, no fate that can circumvent, hinder, or control the firm resolve of a determined soul." And to me, that's talking about that determined soul is that aspect of God that we have access to that is part of our soul. That is that truth. When we access that part and access out of that higher understanding, there is nothing that can circumvent that or hinder that or control this firm resolve for coming true for you. You can rewrite your story. I think this is great. A mind that is stretched by a new experience can never go back to its old dimensions. Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote that. And we know that's true. Once we define ourselves with a new story and we totally believe it, we can't go back. A new story opens up new horizons. Neuroscientists would say that it opens and creates new pathways in our minds, new ways of thinking that totally get rid of the old ways of being and thinking. When we establish new ones, new thoughts, new feelings, new truths, and we live from those new truths. And we cannot go back to old ways of thinking. And the last part of rewriting your story is to give thanks, is to feel that joy. When you have rewritten your story, spend time in the way that it feels being that new story. To celebrate it, to be with it, to repeat it. I know for me, it was to say, I'm loved. My parents love me. And to feel that love. Because I believe that love has never gone away. It's right here in this moment. The same truth for you in your new story is it's right here. And allow yourself to embrace it, to turn up the volume on the great feeling that it brings you. So in the same way, we're building those neural pathways. We're saying yes to this truth, yes to this new story. And in the same way, the things that we say yes to and give thanks for invite more of those same truths into our experience. Yeah? When we pray and give thanks for our prosperity, it attracts more prosperity to us. It's like the universe says, oh, you like that? Right? Our mind, our spirit says, oh, you like that? Then here are some new ideas. Here are some new ways of bringing that into manifestation. It's like, wow. When we say yes to something, 1 trillion cells in our body go, wow, let's get that. I want some of that. Yeah? Can you feel that? It's true. So give thanks for your new story. So this is our affirmation. Again, I invite you to think of what would a new story for you be today? What would a new way of telling an old story be for you? The presence of God desires to express itself as you, because this is how Spirit expresses itself. We are all expressions of the Beloved. God desires to express itself right here on this planet as each one of us, because that's how God expresses itself. So I invite you to hold this new story in your heart. I am divinely inspired to create and live a full, abundant life. Say that with me. I am divinely inspired to create and live a full, abundant life. You are the author of your story. Focus on your new and truthful story. Know and hold this absolute truth for yourself. You are created to be abundant. You are created to be love. You are created to be the love and the light of the world. You are created to be a prosperous expression of God. You are created to live a full and abundant life. You are created to love, to laugh, to live. You are divinely inspired to create. Because that's how Spirit creates through you. You are the author of your story.
Where I live, there are